Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Council meeting of 16 December 2024. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile telephones are turned off or switched to silent. Thank you. We will now commence by reading the Acknowledgement of Country, and I invite Councillor Galt to read the acknowledgement.
Thank you, Chair. I acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as traditional owners and of this land and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and elders from other communities who may be with us today.
Thank you, Councillor Galt. My name is Councillor Victor Franco, and I'm the Deputy Mayor of Boroondara. As the Mayor is not in attendance this evening, it's my responsibility to chair this Council meeting. And I'll start by introducing my fellow councillors. Seated to the left at the horseshoe table in the Council chamber are Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, Councillor Shima Ibuki, Councillor Wes Galt, Councillor Michael Nolan, Councillor Felicity Sinfield, and on the opposite side, we have Councillor Mel Osborne-Smith, Councillor Rob Baillieu, Councillor John Friend Pereira, and Councillor Chris Pattis. I also acknowledge in attendance this evening our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Philip Storer, seated by my right, and our Manager of Governance and Legal, Mr. Brian Wee, seated to my left. There are other council officers in attendance this evening, and they will be introduced at the appropriate time. Please note that the council meeting is being live streamed on council YouTube page, so you can watch the proceedings of the meetings, council deliberations and voting. The meeting will also be recorded and be made available on the council website as soon as practicable after the meeting. I'll move to apologies. I do know we have one apology, to Mr. Wee. Do we have apologies?
Yes, we do. Through you, Chair, the Mayor, Councillor Tawny, is an apology this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wee. I'll now move to the first item on the agenda, the adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting held on 25 November 2024. Councillors, can I please have a motion to adopt and confirm the minutes? Councillor Ibuki, you're moving the motion? Yes?
Through you, Chair, happy to move that we adopt and confirm the minutes for the council meeting held on the 25th of November 24.
And Councillor Galt, you're seconding?
Happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All in favour? I declare the motion carried. I'll now move to declarations of conflict of interest of any councillor or council officer. Are there any conflicts of interest that any of you may wish to foreshadow for the matters on the agenda this evening?
Mr. Chair, I'd foreshadow a conflict in relation to item 10.1. I'll leave the chamber at the time.
Thank you. Now moving to item 3 on the agenda, deputations and presentations, petitions, public submissions. Mr. Wee, are there any deputations, petitions or public submissions?
Through you, Chair, this evening there are 2 petitions. Both relate to Koonung Creek Reserve, one in relation to relocating a water fountain and the second in relation to installation of a side fence.
Thank you, Mr. Wee. And look, for the benefit of members of the public, petitions will be referred to the relevant director for consideration and preparation of a response on behalf of council. And the first name signatory to the petitions will then receive a response from the Mayor advising of council's action. And councillors will receive a quarterly petition update from council officers detailing the status of all the petitions we've received. So, councillors, is anyone prepared to move a motion in relation to the petitions appearing on the screen? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
And Councillor Baillieu?
Seconded.
Thank you. Is anyone opposed? Okay. I'll now put the matter to a vote. All those in favour? Okay, I'll declare the motion carried. Turning to item 4, informal meetings of councillors. We have in the meeting papers details of the informal meetings of councillors, and I invite a councillor to move a motion if they are of so minded. Councillor Nolan?
Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
And seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Friend Pereira. Is anyone opposed? No. I'll put the motion then. Votes in favour? I declare the motion carried. Public question time. Item 5. Council encourages the submission of public questions prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting, which is today, and questions submitted prior to noon today will be provided with a detailed verbal response as well as a response in writing. Those submitted after 12 p.m. receive a verbal response if possible, but will otherwise be taken on notice for a more comprehensive written response to be provided in due course. And Mr. Wee, I understand we do have some public questions.
That's correct. Through you, Chair, governance received 2 questions by one person.
Thank you for the questions. All the questions have been allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules, and all questions will receive a written response in due course. I'll go through the questions. The first question is from Julie Mulhauser on the subject of Homes Victoria, and Ms. Mulhauser asks, what advocacy and to whom has Burundara Council conducted regarding the retention and maintenance of Homes Victoria properties in Burundara? And I'll invite the Director of Urban Living and the Director of Community Services to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms Mulhauser, for your interest in this important matter. Council has advocated for an increased number of social and public housing on Homes Victoria sites proposed for renewal. This includes the Markham Estate in Ashburton and Bill Street in Hawthorn. In both these cases, Council advocated for a significant increase in the number of additional housing units from the proposed 10% uplift. Council's advocacy at Ashburton resulted in 111 units of public housing compared to the initially planned 62 units. With Bill Street, Council's advocacy resulted in 103 units of social housing, an increase on the initially proposed 59 units. In addition, Council's advocacy has included a submission to the inquiry into the Public Housing Renewal Program, a 2020 motion to the Australian Local Government Association's National Assembly, which called for the federal government to increase funding to the states for the adequate provision of public and social housing, a submission to the Victorian Inquiry into Homelessness, a submission to the National Inquiry into Homelessness, and a joint submission into the Inquiry into Homelessness in Victoria from Burundara Manningham Housing and Homelessness Network. Council also regularly contacts Homes Victoria with concerns about the condition of public housing when raised by residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Director of Urban Living wish to add any additional comments? No. Thank you. We have a second question, also from Julie Mulhauser, and also on the subject of Homes Victoria, and she asks, what advocacy and to whom has Burundara Council conducted regarding the state government providing the missing public information with respect to catchment areas and changes to Res Code strategic justifications, technical reports and implementation details? And I'll invite the Director of Urban Living to respond. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Happy to provide a response. Council has lodged several submissions to various planning reforms in recent months. This includes Plan for Victoria and Draft Housing Targets on 26th of August, Draft Camberwell Junction Activity Centre Plan on the 2nd of September, proposed changes to Res Code on the 16th of September, and Activity Centre proposed planning controls on the 7th of October. And all those submissions have raised issues regarding the strategic justification and evidence to support the reforms, as well as the limited information available to the community. The submissions can be downloaded from Council's website. Officers have also directly requested information from the VPA and Department, that's the Victorian Planning Authority and the Department of Transport and Planning throughout the process in officer discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. And I'd like to thank Ms. Mulhauser again for her 2 questions. Moving to the next item on the agenda, item 6, notices of motion. Mr. Wee, do we have any notices of motion?
Through you, Chair, there are no notices of motion this evening.
Thank you. We'll move to item 7 and the presentation of officer reports. Item 7.1 is the October 2024 monthly financial report, and I'd like to invite Sapphire Allen, our Acting Chief Financial Officer, to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'm pleased to present the October 2024 monthly financial report. Council's favourable operating result against a year-to-date budget of $164.19 million is $7.82 million, or 5% above the 24-25 amended budget. At the end of October, Council's cash position stood at $206.69 million, or $15.88 million above the year-to-date budget. Council's balance sheet and cash position remain sound and is satisfactory. Council is committed to regularly evaluating the effectiveness and efficiency of the services they provide, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions for council officers? Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. No question, but happy to move a motion when the time's right.
Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sinfield I'm happy to second the motion.
Well, let's stay with questions for now. Do we have any questions at the moment on the monthly financial report? Councillor Nolan, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Ms. Sapphire, the $379,000 higher than budgeted income for the EV vehicle charging, is that in relation to an increase in use over projected budget or an increase in pricing?
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. So the higher than budgeted income for that, so it's a relatively new fee that's only just been introduced around February, March this financial year. So we've actually had higher than anticipated uptake of that service, so it actually is an increase to what we thought there would be.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, I'll invite Councillor Sinfield to move a motion.
Thank you. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
And Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, Chair. Just to note that I and a number of other councillors have asked questions of this report internally, and we're satisfied. We've had meetings with the officers concerned, and we're satisfied that we're in a very good position.
And are you willing to second the motion?
I am.
Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, well, I'll put the motion to a vote. Votes in favour?
Do I get to speak to the motion, Chair?
You do, if you wish.
It's fine. I'm happy to forego that opportunity as the mover of the motion, but I do commend it and I'm pleased to see everyone supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. We'll move to the next item, 7.2, the quarterly financial report for September.
Point of order, Chair, you might wish to
Declare the motion carried, yes. I'll move to 7.2, the September 2024 quarterly performance report. This item is going to be introduced by Nicole White, our Manager of Strategy and Performance. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Each quarter, Council produces a quarterly performance report which outlines our financial performance, non-financial performance and progress towards the Boroondara Community Plan. Tonight we are presenting the July to September quarterly performance report, which is against the 24-25 amended budget approved by Council on 16 September 2024. Council is on track with its progress towards its major initiatives, strategic indicators and LGPF measures. Some of Council's key highlights have also been included in the covering memo and in our performance section of the report. Tonight, any of the responsible directors and I will be happy to take any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions for the officers? Councillor Sinfield, do you wish to ask a question?
No, Chair, but I'd like to foreshadow a motion.
Okay. Councillor Pattis, would you like to ask a question?
No, not at this stage, Chair. I was going to move the motion, but happy to see what the foreshadowing of the motion is.
Okay. Councillor Friend Pereira, would you like to ask some questions of the officers?
Yes, I would like to ask some questions. It's an incredibly informative report, and there's just a couple of things that I'm curious about getting a little bit more information on, if possible. With regards indicator AM7, animal management prosecutions, we're at 100% of our target. I guess the thing I would like to know is how many, what's the actual number? Is it like there were 10 prosecutions, 100 prosecutions? So if we could get that. And in FS2, food safety, we're at 79% against a target of 92, and the percent of, I think it's samples tested. And again, I'm just looking for the number that goes with that. And final question is strategy 1 in, I think it's environment, on the impact of the container deposit scheme on our waste management, how much income we're actually gaining from the introduction of the CDS scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Friend Pereira. I'll first invite the Director of Urban Living to answer the first part of your questions, and then we'll move to Mr. Daniel Freer to answer the second part. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The first question was in relation to the animal management prosecutions. It is actually only a small number of prosecutions that we undertake each year. It was 3 in the last year, so the number there is 3 prosecutions. We do have a very good success rate when we undertake these prosecutions. If you just bear with me for a moment whilst I have a look at the other indicator.
Well, I might take advantage of the time that Mr. Walker's taking to review that and invite the Director of Places and Spaces, Mr. Daniel Freer, to answer the third part of Mr. Councillor Friend Pereira's question.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chairman, the anticipated income this current financial year is $552,000. This is the first financial year that we'll be receiving this income. It's what is forecast at the moment, and it is tracking on forecast, but we, as I say, we expect it to be $552,000.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, are you in position to answer?
Yeah. So the other question was in regard to the food safety assessments, I recall, which is a 100% compliance rate there. The number of food safety measures undertaken is 1,072. So we undertake quite a significant number of food safety inspections throughout the year.
Councillor Pattis, I understand you'd like to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. I and my colleagues have reviewed this report, and we're quite happy with a number of the performance indicators in here. They're quite extensive and quite detailed. In feedback to the officers that I've provided, and I've had subsequent meetings, I've requested that in future, or the officers look at providing indicators that allow us to compare our performance this year compared to last year or the year before. In other words, indicators that are improvement type indicators rather than just comparing ourselves to budget or comparing ourselves to other council.
Councillor Patters, is this a question?
I'm getting to the question. I just want to give some background, Chair, because I think it's important. So what I'm saying is I've had the discussions. In the discussions, I've had really positive feedback from the officers that they're willing to look at those sort of indicators and maybe come back to us at some future date in the report. But so the question I want to ask is, is that possible? Can the officers look at incorporating indicators that compare our activity and our performance this year to previous years?
Thank you. I'll invite our Chief Executive Officer to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In some cases, the clear answer will be yes, particularly where they are annual indicators. There may be some others where the data isn't available on any other basis, but certainly our objective is to understand that you're looking for trendline data, and where we can do that, that is what we'll provide.
So would whoever's Councillor Sinfield
before
consider an
Councillor
amendment?
Patters, wait, I will invite, if there are no more questions, I will then move to and I'll invite Councillor Sinfield to move a motion. But I just want to check. You have a question, Councillor Hollingsworth? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just listening to Councillor Patters talking about the strategic indicators has prompted me to ask about the indicator with regard to graffiti removal. And I know this is a subject matter we often talk about in our Safety Advisory Committee meetings, but we were not able to have the meeting, the final one for this year. So I just ask whether the Director for Places and Spaces may be able to just give an update of Council's success of obtaining a state grant to continue with this. And sorry, if I can just preface that by saying the results exceptional, 98% out of 100% target, but obviously if we can get additional state funding to go towards graffiti removal, it will help escalate the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Mr. Freer, are you in a position to respond?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the state government has not announced the finalisation of grants for that program at this point in time.
Thank you. If I might just ask, is there an ETA of early in the new year?
Through you again, Mr. Chair, we understand that the grants were due to be announced about a month ago. We're still waiting. We would like to see that, of course, as soon as possible, so I can continue to keep councillors informed as that comes to hand.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Well, as there are no more questions, I'll invite Councillor Sinfield to move a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to move the officer's recommendation, and in anticipation of some amendments coming, perhaps I can address those things when I speak to the motion.
Okay, do we have a seconder for the motion?
I was going to suggest an amendment, Mr. Chair, if I could.
We need a seconder first before we can consider an amendment. Well, I think Councillor Friend Pereira's seconding.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, Councillor Sinfield, do you wish to speak to your motion? I'll allow Councillor Sinfield to speak first before considering amendments.
Thank you, Chair. I commend the officer's work and the September QPR to my colleagues, and note that perhaps the best time to talk about how we may restructure or incorporate other things in a quarterly performance report may in fact be a C, B and D, where we could discuss the things that are required in things like the LGPRF framework and other things that may be able to be incorporated in such reporting. So I would encourage my colleagues to accept the motion that is on the screen and perhaps refrain from policy on the fly or imposing something that we haven't fully explored prior to an offline discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Friend Pereira, as the seconder of the motion, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve.
To assist, well, I know Councillor Pattis, you have your light on. Are you proposing to speak or to move an amendment?
I'm proposing to move an amendment, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I'll invite you to move the
So
amendment.
the amendment, as I received a positive and heartening response from the CEO that trend indicators can be included in quarterly performance reports, I'd like to move an amendment that, where possible, we can move trend or performance indicators in our quarterly performance reports. And there will be plenty of opportunity to look at other areas where we can incorporate these things. But I think it's very, very important that we include these sort of
Councillor Pattis, we probably need, rather than speaking to the amendment, we do need to get the amendment first and then I'll invite you.
Let's do that first. So
Yes.
thank you, Chair.
So,
So where possible, that trend indicators be included in the quarterly performance report that can demonstrate our improvement compared to previous years. Our improvement in performance compared to previous years. Our improvement in performance.
look, I'd like to invite our Chief Executive Officer to provide some comments in relation to the wording of the proposed amendment before we look for a seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I note, in fact, the word has changed to performance, and I think that's a more suitable descriptor rather than talking about improvement, because in some cases there will quite legitimately not necessarily be improvements. And the key to having data like this available to you is it actually instigates the discussion so we can all understand what's actually happened. I think that's the critical thing with trend data. Yes, you want to improve where you can, but if not, we all need to understand why that might be the case.
Totally agree.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? The amendment, sorry.
I have a suggestion, Chair,
Councillor Sinfield.
that the word report in the second line should be plural or be prefaced with the word future.
Happy to accept that.
Okay, so we'd have, where possible, that trend indicators be included in future quarterly performance reports.
That's it. The word future before quarterly. And
take out the
remove
the
before future. Thank you, Councillor Sinfield.
So do we, with that, do we have a seconder for the amendment?
One further suggestion, if I may, Chair.
Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith.
Perhaps you can delete the word can in the second last line.
Yes.
And the word
Councillor Pattis, are you okay with deleting the word can
Yes.
before demonstrate?
Yes.
Now with a well...
One additional suggestion, if I may, through you, Chair.
Councillor Nolan.
Demonstrate our performance compared to the previous year.
No. Councillor Nolan, I want to leave it up to the officers because in some cases they may want to compare us to previous years. The previous year may in fact be an odd year, but it would be good if they could compare us to previous years. So I'm leaving it more flexible rather than tightening it to just last year.
So at this stage, we have an amendment that's been moved to the motion, and if nobody seconds this, it will lapse for want of a seconder. So is there a seconder? Councillor Bookie.
Sorry, I just had a grammatical correction. I
Councillor
suggest a
Bookie.
grammatical correction. Where possible, that trend indicators be included in future quarterly performance reports to demonstrate our performance compared to previous years.
I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
I'll just check that council officers who are putting the motion on the screen have got the words. Okay, so we're back. Councillor Nolan, do you have a suggested change to the
Foreshadow
wording?
that I'm happy to second the motion as it is.
Thank you. Okay. So now we're dealing with the amendment. Is there anyone opposed to the amendment? Okay, well, Councillor Pattis, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Very briefly, Chair, I think it's important, our current quarterly performance report includes lots of really good indicators, and they allow us to have a deep discussion. I feel that it is missing these trend indicators, which will allow us to compare ourselves not just to other councils and not just to our budget, but to our previous performance, because there is an expectation in the community that overall we are getting better at what we're doing.
And Councillor Nolan, as the seconder of the motion, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
Happy to speak now. I'll endorse Councillor Pattis's remarks about seeing if we're improving performance year on year. And secondly, I'll also note that for an incoming group of councillors, new councillors like myself, it's particularly valuable to be able to see what happened in the previous year as we're looking for the first time at the current year.
Councillors, is there anyone else who'd like to speak? I know it's not convention, but we've gone around a bit in relation to this item, so I'm willing to invite anyone else who does wish to speak. No? Okay, well, I'll put the motion in relation to the amendment. Votes in favour? I declare the amendment carried. So now we're to the substantive motion, and Councillor Pattis is now the owner effectively of the substantive motion. And Councillor Pattis, would you like to speak to the motion, noting that you've already just spoken to the amendment?
I'm happy not to speak to the motion because we've said, I believe, enough, and sounds like we got good support.
And the seconder of the, would the seconder like to speak?
I'm happy also to endorse and not say any more at this point. Thank you.
Okay, councillors. Well, then I'll put the motion to the vote. Votes in favour? I declare the motion carried. Thank you. We'll move to the next item. Item 7.3, the appointment, awarding of a contract for Urban Planning Heritage Advisory Consultancy Services. I'll ask Erin McCarthy, our Coordinator of Urban Planning, to introduce the item.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Item 7.3 seeks to award a contract for the Urban Planning Heritage Advisor position. The Heritage Advisor role is an important and valuable component of the services provided by the Urban Planning Department. For the 23-24 financial year, Urban Planning assessed approximately 500 applications where heritage was a relevant consideration. The Heritage Advisor role currently provides approximately 200 written comments on such applications, and there are also a number of applications where there is verbal advice provided to the planner assessing the application. The contract will be for an initial term of 3 years with a possible 2-year extension. Overall, the panel was of the view that RR Conservation Design Studio offered the best value for money with extensive experience, including the Heritage Council of Victoria. It is noted that a minor adjustment to the resolution has been made, with point 2 amended to clarify that any price adjustment to the overall contract cost is due to rise and fall of CPI. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions of officers? Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I have just one question. I am wondering if there is capacity in the scope of works to require our approved heritage advisor to provide advice to council where sought on some of the broader impacts on heritage caused as a result of the state government housing plan.
I'd like to invite the Director to answer that question. Thank you.
Happy to answer that. We do actually speak to our Heritage Advisor about current and pertinent issues that might have a strategic nature to them, even though that is not the nature or purpose of the consultancy service. So we will have those discussions from time to time and seek input on strategic changes. However, the strategic planning team within the City Futures department has primary responsibility for strategic matters and employs a principal heritage senior staff member within that team that has knowledge and expertise in heritage to enable that strategic input.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for Ms McCarthy with regard to the officer's recommendation, dot point 2, where it talks about the cost for a 5-year contract term at 1.4 plus. But my understanding is the initial contract's for 3 years, is that correct? So would that be then, the contract would be more around 871 then with the option to renew for another 2 years?
Thank you, through you, Chair. The cost outlined there is the total cost for the overall 5-year contract.
But we're awarding for 3 years initially, is that correct? So the amount awarded would be less than what's stated
Correct,
here?
yes.
Yeah, look, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. And if I may, a second question, just following on from Councillor Osborne-Smith, with regard to what Council is undertaking with our heritage strategy, a strategic approach, as a body of work, is this person potentially going to have some oversight of that, albeit 2 different sections of planning?
Mr. Scott Walker, the Director, can answer.
Thanks, Chair. I'll take that question. They would not have that role. They would not have a direct role in relation to the heritage strategy. So this, again, is a consultancy service to provide advice and comments on planning applications and planning matters from a heritage perspective. It's not the more broader strategic decisions and advice that will be sought through alternative services within the City Futures Department.
Thank you. And sorry, if I may, just getting back to the contract awarded, I'm just wondering, since it is just for 3 years, should the value of the contract be amended in the officer recommendation to reflect 3 years instead of 5 years? With the option then for another 2?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The maximum value we've indicated there projects a 5 years service, so we're seeking that financial permission as part of the report to Council this evening to enable us to act on that option without coming back to Council to amend that maximum amount.
I understand, thank you.
Councillor Pattis, you have a question?
I do, Chair. I think this is an excellent result for our city. I was going to ask through you to the officers, the successful tenderer, does she live in our city? I'm just interested in know. I know she's worked with us for a number of years, but does she live or work in our city? Just as a general interest.
Through you, Chair, for privacy reasons, we wouldn't give an answer to that question.
Really? Chair, I'm not asking for her address. I'm just asking for whether she's either in her practice or she lives in our city. I don't know whether that is a reasonable answer through you, Chair.
Bear with me.
It's obvious that she's worked with us before, but I think it's proper to ask whether someone that we are that we are going to ask for their services over the next 5 years actually lives. It's not a
I'm not,
criteria.
Councillor Patters, I'm not sure about the relevance of the residential address of one of...
I'm not asking for the residential address, Chair. I believe it's important that any services that are tendered for, that we know whether these people or these services are provided by members of our community.
Point of order, Chair.
Thank you.
Section 83.1.1, I think the question's inappropriate.
Councillor Sinfield, sorry, you cut off when you were notifying the point of order.
Section 83.1.1, I think it may reasonably be considered to be trivial or objectionable in the circumstances, Chair.
Yes. Look, I'm
It's a yes or
going
no
to
question.
invite the... I'm going to rule in favour of the point of order. I do consider the matter trivial, but I will offer the opportunity for the Chief Executive Officer to respond, and it'll be the final response. Thank you.
I'll foreshadow then another question under general business then.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the relevance, I think, has to be questioned as to where the person lives becomes important. You're engaging someone for the purposes of their professional expertise and experience. And whether they live in Boroondara or not is actually irrelevant to that. So it's not a question which would have been part of our evaluation criteria for that reason. The short answer to your question is no.
Thank you. Councillor Patters, do you have any other questions?
The answer to my question, whether they live in our city, is no.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from councillors? No. Well, I'm in search of a motion. Is any councillor willing to move? Councillor Hollingsworth?
Happy to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Sinfield?
Just second.
Thank you. Is there, for the benefit of the mover and seconder, is there anyone opposed? No. Well, with that, I'll invite the mover to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to emphasise the importance of the role of this person, having a working relationship with Boroondara Council, understanding that obviously our heritage assets, residential, commercial and others yet to be determined are very important to our community, and I strongly commend this to my councillor colleagues. Thank you.
Councillor Sinfield, do you wish to comment? Okay, I'll put the matter to the vote. Votes in favour? I'll declare that carried. Thank you. We'll move to the next item, 7.4, the Balwyn North Special Rate and Charge Scheme for 2025 to 2030. This item will be introduced by Graham Mawson, the Acting Manager of Arts, Culture and Economic Development. Thank you, Mr. Mawson, and
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This report seeks a resolution from Council to introduce and give public notice of its intention to declare a Balwyn North Special Rate Charge Scheme as required under Section 163 of the Local Government Act 1989. The North Balwyn Traders Association wrote to Council in August 2024, requesting Council renew the current scheme for a further 5 years. The Association has developed a 5-year strategic plan of marketing and business development activities to support businesses in the precinct. The Association has consulted with the traders in the precinct and indicated to Council that there is support for the scheme. The scheme has been in place since 1999. This is not a new charge, but a request to renew the existing scheme. This report seeks approval to give public notice of the proposed scheme through a 28-day public notice period commencing in February 2025. Commencing the notice of intention to declare a scheme does not commit Council to implementing the scheme. Approval from Council formally signals commencement of the statutory process to give the parties included in the scheme area the opportunity to make a written submission or an objection. The outcome of the public notice period will inform Council on whether it wishes to proceed with declaring the scheme through a future report in 2025. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Sinfield.
Happy to move a motion when the time's right, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from officers, from councillors to the officers, sorry? No? Well, over to you, Councillor Sinfield.
The officer's recommendation, please.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bookie.
Happy to second, Chair.
For the benefit of the mover and seconder, is anyone opposed? Okay, with nobody opposed, I'll invite the mover to speak.
Thank you, Chair. There's very little to say. It's quite procedural. I thank the officers for their work, and hopefully the local trader association in Balwyn North will be happy with this outcome, proceeding to the next stage. Thank you.
And Councillor Bookie, would you like to speak?
I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll put the motion to the vote. Votes in favour. I declare the motion carried. Thank you. We'll move now to item 7.5, recommendations from the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on 17 September 2024. This item, I note that this dates before the recent council elections. The item will be introduced by Brian Wee, the Manager of Governance and Legal.
Through you, Chair, as the title suggests, this report brings the findings of the recommendations of the Audit and Risk Committee before Council. The reports, the 12 reports that were received by the Audit and Risk Committee are set out in the attachment to the document, together with the Audit and Risk Committee's recommendations to Council. Happy to take any questions.
Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Sinfield, would you like to move a motion?
I would. Thank you, Chair.
Now's the time.
Thank you. The officer's recommendation.
And do we have a seconder, Councillor Bookie?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. For the benefit of the mover and seconder, is anyone opposed? No. Councillor Sinfield, would you like to speak?
Just briefly, to note that Councillor Ibuki and I are the new councillor representatives on the Audit and Risk Committee. We met on the 4th of December and there was nothing adverse raised in relation to these current recommendations, and I commend the report to my colleagues.
Thank you. Councillor Ibuki, would you like to add anything further?
No, Chair, thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll put the motion to the vote. Votes in favour. I declare the motion carried. Thank you. We'll move to item 7.6, Councillor Advisory Committees and Appointments, Policy and Assignments. This item will be introduced by Mr. Brian Wee, the Manager of Governance and Legal. Mr. Wee.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, this report brings to Council 3 matters to consider. The first is a new policy for advisory committees and external appointments. The second is terms of reference for continuing committee and advisory and continuing and new advisory committees, as well as external appointments. And the third is the actual appointments for advisory committees and external bodies. That's Appendix 1, and the terms of reference are Appendixes 2 and 3. While this is a new policy, there's no substantial changes to Council's approach. Council has previously had internal committees, which are councillors, officers and guests. These are now called council advisory committees. External committees with councillors, community members and officers, now called community advisory committees. And external appointments remain the same, so there's changed the nomenclature. What has changed is the format. Previously, each advisory committee had its own terms of reference, but those were based on a template that were largely similar across all the committees, with minor changes between them based on time and the nature of the committee. This policy combines all the common terms that applied to the advisory committees into one policy, but does allow for specific departures through the appendixes with terms of reference relating to each committee where there are departures. For completeness, I note that there will be a report with some further advisory committees that will be brought to Council likely in February. I note that there were a number of minor clarifying amendments made to the policy through some consultation with councillors after the agenda was published. These clarify that some committees will have the mayor or some specific ward councillors as part of permanent membership, if you will, of the committees. It also clarifies that the primary policy states that there are generally a minimum of 2 and up to 5 councillors on each committee. And given that the general policy states that the numbers in each individual committee were removed, and it'll just be subject to the between 2 and 5. The policy will also be amended with all these changes and any other changes that are brought as a result of the resolution and debate today. If councillors decides to adopt the officer's recommendation, that's because the policy that will be adopted will be the one that will be annexed to the minutes of this meeting. In terms of appointments, councillors were previously invited to appoint or to nominate for advisory committees. However, before deciding this matter, councillors, through the chair, may wish to update their nominations or preferences, particularly including nominations for 2 new committees, which do not currently have any nominees. That's the Governance Rule Advisory Committee and the Burundara Vibrant Shopping Precincts Advisory Committee. A number of councillors have expressed interest, but through you, Chair, I expect there'll be nominations this evening. I also understand that there will be nominations for substitutes for 2 of the appointments, external appointments. That's the Municipal Association of Victoria and the Metropolitan Transport Forum. Similar to the policy, the appointments will be noted in changes to Appendix 1, and that will form part of the amended policy that's attached to the minutes of this meeting. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wee. Councillors, do we have any questions for Mr. Wee? And I note that I will be inviting nominations for some of the committees in a moment, but before we move to that, are there any questions? Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to officers, I'm wondering the consequences of not adopting the advisory committee and amendments policy tonight as per point 1 of the officer recommendation.
The existing resolution by council maintains the appointments of previous members of committees and the previous terms of reference to committees until a fresh resolution is made. However, there are a number of issues with that. First, some of those committees have councillors that are not currently councillors.
Before you continue, Mr. Wee, I think you might have misinterpreted my question. It's just in relation to point 1 that relates to policy. I don't have any issue with points 2 and point 3 of the motion in relation to the terms of reference or the appointments, and I understand the need for that. My question solely relates to the adoption of the policy tonight.
Through you, Chair. In my view, the matter cannot proceed without point 1 because the terms of reference in point 2 are merely the departures from what is in the primary policy. So you will have effectively committees without the primary rules that govern them.
Through you, Chair, a follow-up if I may. So as I read it, point 3 can't happen with point 2 and point 2 can't happen with point 1, yet we've managed to exist with an adoption of appointments in previous councils. So we must have a way to navigate through this. I will flag to my colleagues that I'm uncomfortable with point 1 at this juncture, and I'm considering my options in relation to an alternate motion.
Do you wish to add anything, Mr. Wee? Not at this stage. Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, well look, what I'd suggest is that we move up on the screen to Appendix 1. Sorry? We can't have it on the screen? If we can put Appendix 1 up on the screen, we can see the councillors that have nominated and the gaps. while the governance staff are looking to put that Appendix 1 up on the screen, I will, here we can see we'll stay on that page. We can see the councillors that have nominated, and I encourage each of you to have a quick review of those nominations. And if you're satisfied with that, I'll leave that there. And in relation to the Governance Rules Advisory Committee, which is the penultimate one that you can see there under Council Advisory Committees, I invite councillors to nominate for that committee. Councillor Pattis.
Chair, I'd like to nominate the chairs of the Urban Planning Committee and the Services Delegated Committee to that committee, because I think they would have useful experience that they could provide.
Well, I think, bear with me while I take some governance advice on this matter.
And the mayor.
Well, I'll have to ask each of the chairs whether they wish to accept such a nomination. Councillor Gold.
Which committee again? Sorry, I was checking something else up there while you were...
This is for the Governance Rules Advisory Committee, which is the penultimate one you can see up on the screen there.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to be part of that.
And Councillor Baillieu?
Yes.
Okay, I won't nominate the Mayor in her absence, but the Mayor can attend. And Councillor Friend Pereira?
Yes, I'd like to nominate for the Governance Rules Advisory Committee.
And is there anyone else that wishes to nominate? Or based on that? Councillor Sinfield, you'd like to nominate?
I would, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I would like to nominate for that committee as well. And that'll take us to 5 unless anybody else wants to put their hand up. So I'll leave it there. And moving down. Okay. No, that's fine. Moving down to the community advisory committees, you will see at the bottom of the screen above the Burundara Vibrant Shopping Precincts Advisory Committee. Councillors, would you like to nominate, or who would like to nominate for that committee?
I would like to nominate for the Vibrant Shopping Precincts Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Councillor Pattis? Councillor Shimei Ibuki?
I would also like to nominate for that committee. Thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Friend Pereira?
I'd like to nominate for that committee as well.
And is there anybody else? Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith?
No, thank you. I would like to raise a question about the name, though, perhaps, of one of the previous.
Yes, I'll just finish the nominations and then I'll come back to additional questions, if I might. Moving further along on the screen to the next.
In the absence of Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith, I'd like to nominate for that committee as well.
Okay, that's for the Vibrant Shopping Precincts Advisory. Thank you, Councillor Baillieu. I think that takes us to 5 councillors. That's the maximum number reached. And moving to the next page, I don't know if we can scroll to page 14, we have under appointments for external organisations, the Municipal Association of Victoria. Councillor Hollingsworth is suggested as the nominee, and I assume you are happy with that nomination?
Very happy to accept, thank you.
And Councillor Pattis?
I was going to nominate to be the alternate.
Thank
Is that
you.
what it's called? The alternative?
Substitute. Alternate, yes. Thank you. So is there anybody else? No. Moving to the Metropolitan Transport Forum, Councillor Nolan is identified as the delegate. And I assume, Councillor Nolan, you are happy with that?
Yes, happy.
And do we have anyone who wishes to be the alternate? Councillor Pattis?
I do, Chair.
Okay, anybody else? I'll leave it at that. With that, I think we've got a full complement of councillors. So, Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith, you wanted to raise an issue?
Through you, Chair, just in relation to the names, or the name of one of those committees, please.
Yes. What would you like to ask, or what would you like to suggest?
I would like to suggest something that's been canvassed amongst fellow councillors and agreed, and that is, if you could scroll back up, please. I propose to change the name of Recreational Trails and Cycling Advisory Committee to simply the Greenways Committee.
Greenways Advisory Committee or Greenways?
I'm sorry, Greenways Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we'll probably pick that up with the mover of motion, but I can see Councillor Gold's got his light on.
Thank you very much, Chair. Happened to be on the same item, but not the name. We skipped past that fairly quickly, and there's only 4 councillors in it at the moment. As a number of those trails run through my ward, I'd like to add my name to that list if I could.
Yes, absolutely. That would take us to 5 councillors. So, with that, I'm in search of a motion and Councillor Ibuki.
Would you like to put the page up for me, please?
Yes, the officer's recommendation is what you're looking for.
I would like to move that we accept the officer's recommendation to adopt the advisory committee and appointment policy, adopt the terms of reference, appoint councillors to the various committees, amend the name of the committee to Greenways Advisory Committee, and also note that given this is the first year after an election, advisory committees may seek to have their terms of reference amended through a report prepared by officers for council, and following this year, terms of reference would ordinarily be amended annually when appointments are made to advisory committees.
Thank you. We'll just get that amendment, the amendment to the officer's recommendation that you've suggested up on the screen. Thank you. Councillor Ibuki, I think that's a reflection of what you've said?
Yes, thank you.
And do we have a seconder? Councillor Pattis, seconding the motion. Councillor Ibuki, would you like to speak to... is there any opposition to the motion for the benefit of the mover and seconder? Councillor, you can put your hand up indicating that you wish to speak. I will invite you to speak, Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Ibuki, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I'd just like to thank my fellow councillors for nominating onto various committees, and we look forward to a very productive year across a wide range of activities and issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pattis, as a seconder, would you like to speak now?
Yes, Chair. We have had a number of people from the community, because this is a public document, we've had a number of people from the community wanting to strengthen some of the terms and references. So I just want to remind them that this motion allows for us to review those terms of reference early in the new year for some of those committees as required, and come back to council to approve.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Sinfield?
Thank you, Chair. Ultimately, I support the motion, but I'm not comfortable when it's introduced saying that here's the policy and subject to a few changes as per, informal communications by email, circular and so forth. So I note that this has not been to a council briefing, and I'm quite uncomfortable about adopting a policy subject to a raft of changes. So I'll just put that on the record and ultimately, as I said, I support the concept.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. With your indulgence, I was just wanting to ask if the term greenways could be elaborated a little bit as to why that name's been selected, and if Councillor Osborne-Smith might like to speak to that.
Look, I'll ask councillors to speak, and certainly if Councillor Osborne-Smith wants to comment. Do you have any other questions or comments, Councillor Hollingsworth, or is that it?
Just to provide some context of the name.
Yes. So, Councillor Osborne-Smith, would you like to speak to this matter, and in particular to the issue of greenways?
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak briefly to the name. This subcommittee has some important work ahead of it in the months and years to come, and without preempting the work that committee will undertake, I think its accepted vision is a more broad and substantive vision than that which the current name implies. The current name is restricted only to cycling and to active transport, and yet the trails and the linear parks that we are blessed to have extending through our city are more than that. And so we feel that a name like Greenways is a fresh approach that this council will take. It is a more encompassing name that can bring together some of the many varied activities undertaken along and around these trails. It will, I believe, set this council as a reformist and progressive council in the work that this committee will do. And I should point out that the name Greenways is in fact a much used term in North America and Europe to describe shared public trails along garden and linear parkways through cities. So I think I speak on behalf of other councillors when I suggest this name Greenways will be a terrific attribute for this city going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? Well, look, I'll just finish with a couple of short remarks. I'd like to echo the comments of Councillor Osborne-Smith in relation to greenways. I think it is a really significant and landmark direction that this council is taking, and I think it's something for which we will be could really set the future for what this council will be remembered, among many other things, a landmark project. And it is a common descriptor in North America and Europe, but it's something that really reflects well in terms of the Boroondara environment. I'd also just make mention that at the last council meeting, through a motion I think moved by Councillor Galt, we also moved to adopt a climate advisory committee, and that climate advisory committee, we will come back in the new year with the terms of reference as not forgotten. It's on its way. Work is being done in relation to that. And the budget committee was one of the others that was adopted at that time, and we've got those terms of reference here. So with that, I'll put the matter to the vote. Votes in favour. I'll declare that carried unanimously. Now moving to the next item, general business, item 8. Councillors, are there any items of general business? Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. I do have one item of general business, and it is minor in nature, and that is just to inform our community that the Australian Red Cross Lifeblood Donor Centre has opened at 293 Camberwell Road in Camberwell. They've been taking donations since the 19th of November, but formally opened last week on the 6th of December. Great to have such a fantastic asset in our community to support the community more broadly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pattis, you have a matter of general business?
I do, Chair, and that's just to flag that tonight I was ruled out of order because the matter of whether a service provider lived or worked in our city was deemed to be trivial. I don't think it's trivial whether the people that we choose, I'm not saying it should be...
Councillor Pattis, that matter has been resolved. A point of order was moved by Councillor Sinfield. I ruled on that point of order. If you wish to dissent from that point of order, the opportunity was at the time to have moved a dissent motion. And
I'm simply flagging, Chair, that at such future date, I'll be coming back with the support of the councillors, looking at whether in fact service providers live or work in our city could be a criteria that we use in evaluating, all other things being equal, evaluating our service providers. I'm simply communicating the fact that I don't think it's trivial, but I will go through the proper process and see whether we would want to make it part of our criteria.
Thank you, Councillor Pattis. Are there any other items of general business? I have a matter of general business that I'd like to move, which is a leave of absence for our Mayor, Councillor Tawney. And I don't know if we've got a motion on the screen. I'm in search of a mover of the motion seeking leave of absence for our Mayor. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Happy to move, thank you.
Thank you. And second, Councillor Osborne-Smith?
Yes, happy to second. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. In the interest of the mover and seconder, is anyone opposed to giving our Mayor leave of absence? No? Well, I'm not. I'll just put the motion to the vote. Votes in favour. I declare the motion carried unanimously. Moving to urgent business now. Councillors, are there any items of urgent business? No. Confidential business. We do have a matter of confidential business. So relating to item 10.1, I know our Chief Executive Officer has declared a conflict of interest and is leaving the chamber. Councillors, due to the nature of this matter, I am seeking now a motion to close this council meeting to the public in accordance with section 62(2)(a) and subsection 3(1) of the Local Government Act 2020. And do I have I'm looking for Councillor Pereira. Thank you. And Councillor Sinfield, seconding. Thank you. Is anyone opposed? No. So I'll put the matter to a vote. Votes in favour. Declare that carried unanimously. And I declare the meeting now closed to the public. To the members of the community watching tonight's proceedings, the live stream will cease while the confidential business is being discussed, and we will reopen the meeting to the public at the conclusion of the discussion. I would also ask all members of the gallery to please leave. Thank you very much. And I'll also ask others to leave as well. Thank you. Thank you. This brings us to the end of the order of business for the council meeting of 16 December 2024. Thank you to everyone who joined us in the gallery and online this evening. I will declare the council meeting closed. I just make a note for those who are watching online or who were present that we dealt with a confidential item of business and hence we had to close. And now we're simply ending the meeting. So thank you everyone. I declare the meeting closed.